Good morning,
Good morning, guys.
Listen, why are you doing this?
What?
You gotta do it
You
last
gotta
week.
do it last week.
How's it going, guys?
He
So,
muted
welcome back
me!
to Human...
He muted me!
Quiet! Get back in your cage!
Okay.
Sorry about that. Welcome back to Heroes on the Horizon. Sunday morning on... It's not Sunday morning. It's Saturday morning.
It's always been Saturday. Every single day we do this show.
I don't know where I am
it's
anymore.
Saturday. Is the light on? Is the red radio
Why don't you
light
go
on?
look and see the lights on?
We're rolling.
Oh, I'll just press the button right there. And guaranteed. Sorry, guys. We have a little on-air light, and you're probably really confused right now.
I'm having fun.
Clearly.
We've got a very special episode for you today.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a bit of a scary episode, you could say.
My pastime is dying.
We could step on a few toes with this episode. We're going to be talking about a few controversial topics about Marvel
And comic books in general.
Comicsgate.
Ooh, SJWs!
Yeah.
Brie Larson!
We're going to do our best to be fair and unbiased and not completely destroy...
Diversity is killing comics.
Yeah, we're not going to do
really,
that.
Yeah, that's wild. But anyway, thank y'all for listening. We're coming at you live from the IUS campus with all the geese. It's mating season for geese. Did you notice that?
I generally do not spend my time staring at the geese while they're mating, so no.
No, just how they're acting. Anyway.
They're mean.
If you want more of this fun Heroes on the Horizon
If you
stuff...
want more geese mating...
No. 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 You have lost. That's horrible. Are we registering? Oh, I have to make sure. Yeah. You can follow us on our Twitter @on_heroes. We'll retweet stuff sometimes. We have an Instagram @heroes_on_the_horizon. You can see us post pictures of comic book panels that are probably copyrighted, but we don't know. We're just gonna roll with it. Hold on, first. And we also have a YouTube channel where I'm eventually gonna post all our episodes. But hey, college makes Charlie busy, and so does work. But I'll get them up eventually. I promise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spicy.
Muy
caliente.
Muy caliente.
Sehr warm.
So let's just jump into it.
So, before we start, you want to go?
You didn't get that reference, did you?
Let's just jump right into it. Might as well jump.
He doesn't
go
watch
ahead
Philip
and
DeFranco, apparently.
Jump.
That's okay.
Jump.
Let's-
Might as well.
We're
jump.
so unfocused today.
Hey, you! Who said that?
So,
Baby, how have you been?
Marvel's big problem,
Marvel.
and really the problem with the comic book industry as a whole right now,
It's dying.
it's dying. The art form is dying and being replaced, possibly with just a bunch of half-baked movies. But
I mean, honestly, you're right. But
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to talk about a few of the key names before we get started, or
so
we can come back?
let's
to
just introduce what we're talking about for the people who don't know, because I feel like it's dying is not a very good
You're right.
explanation. So, comic book sales have been dropping.
Tremendously ever since they're as low right now as they were in the 90s comic book crash, whenever comic book industry almost actually died fully on because there was no sales. But it's just people aren't buying paperback comics like they used to, and because of that, we have hundreds and thousands of comic book shops closing across America every single year, and because people aren't buying comics anymore.
It's partially for the same reason that people kind of have stopped buying books. Really, they should start offering comics on Kindle.
They do.
They do?
They do.
Well,
Absolutely. Comixology, yeah, Marvel Unlimited. This is online.
That doesn't. I wouldn't
Amazon
consider that the
has
same
that.
thing as Kindle, but yeah.
You can buy comics online and read
Yeah.
them.
And I mean, more people are willing to pirate things as well.
Absolutely. But
The fact is that it's easier to go to a comic book website that you can pirate basically every comic book ever made than it is to go to the store and hope you find what you're looking for. Like, it takes 2 clicks to pirate something now.
Absolutely.
Or to stream a movie, or to do any of that stuff.
I can use my Marvel Unlimited, take pictures of all the panels, and post them on iPhone or something like that, and people can get the whole comic like that.
And you get the essentially the same experience reading a comic on your computer, pirating it, than you would if you were to buy the book, which most people aren't going to do. And most people, I'd say, would buy it digitally in the first place if they were to buy it, and that's the same experience as pirating it, except they spend money.
I say to a degree, but I feel like there's a certain group of people who are like this, have a strong love of the paperback feel to it. Like, because people like refuse to read digital books like me, because like they like the feel of like paper in their hands and the weight, and the fact that it takes up half my room.
Well, yeah.
Paperback copies.
See, I agree with you. As someone who has a record collection, I think that there is value to the physical medium. There's an art to it in packaging and things like that. But most people, I would say, especially people who aren't as involved in the industry and aren't as interested in it, don't really care about that. They may be just interested mildly in the story, so they'll go read it. And it's easier, partially because of a paywall, to just pirate it than it is to actually read it honestly or to buy it. But the thing is that unlike some other mediums like movies, where going and seeing the movie in a theater is an actual experience versus seeing it on your computer, there is very little difference between seeing a comic book digitally that you purchased and seeing a comic book digitally that you pirated. There's no benefit to actually spending the money besides just knowing in your heart of hearts that you didn't break the law that day. This isn't a defense of pirating. This is just the problem.
I say that's an aspect of the problem.
It's a part of it.
Yeah. At this boils down to the whole thing that people aren't buying comics anymore, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a problem that a lot of art mediums are having right now. It's not just comics.
Absolutely. And in recent years, especially this year actually, DC decided to cut back on the number of titles it's been producing, so there's not 52 new comics being released every month from DC. They're cutting down to like, I think 30 possibly, which is big. And I think recently Marvel's gonna have like a big press conference where they're at like a more of a convention where we'll like pitch like why comics are important, why their impact, as a way to like make Disney think that selling comics is still beneficial to keep selling comics, because that's presently apparently at risk right now.
Yeah,
it's kind of scary, but
Disney's out to make money. I bet they're feeling like, man, why did we buy this company that's failing?
Absolutely. And a further problem is comic book distribution is actually under monopoly right now. There's only one company that sells all the comics, ships them, produces them, creates them.
Ooh, that's not good.
For every single comic creator. It's called Diamond Publishing. It has Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, Image, IDW, all the big brands under a hat. And since it's a comic book industry, the government really doesn't care, because it's comic books. Like, if it was oil, hell yeah.
Yeah, like if Diamond, it's Diamond Publishing?
Diamond Publications.
If they were like in control of like every book, that would be different, but it's just comics.
Watch Disney buy that group.
Oof. Oof. Disney needs to be stopped, but that's a different...
Disney's scary right now because they bought Fox. And since Disney bought Fox, they sold three major properties, well, more than a few major properties from other distributors. That's not important right now.
It's always important, but it's not what
Hang
we're
in there,
about.
Paramount. Don't bend the knee. Don't sell your soul to them.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm surprised the government's actually letting them pass. Also, Disney's the ones that destroyed copyright law, but that's a different topic for a different time.
And maybe not even on this show. Hey.
Maybe not. Although I'd say that copyright law does affect comic books.
Absolutely. Because Conan the Barbarian, Tarzan, all those like old-timey characters are all big sellers still. And because they're public domain, but right now, Marvel's the only one publishing Conan comics, which are great, by the way. Check out the Conan comics. But yeah,
so
kind of just passes from creator to creator. What were we saying?
Oh, sorry. I was going to move on because we've kind of described what I'd say, that there is a big problem. Not prices. Sales are dropping. Across the board, across every comic book maker, person,
to a degree, yeah.
Thing. And they don't know what to do. So, a few key names involved.
Yes, a few key names involved this. So, Axel Alonso is someone who probably mentioned here a few times. He was the former Marvel editor-in-chief from 2011 to 2017. That was when they had their big diversity push, which we'll talk about that here in a second. C.B. Cebulski is the current editor-in-chief for Marvel, and also I have this old game called Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and C.B. Cebulski was the hacker you're supposed to find because you can trust him, and I think this is hilarious. Anyway.
I mean, but they do that all the time. They did that a lot in Into the Spider-Verse. They would have a bunch of different references to names and stuff.
Yeah,
like in the
but he wasn't like a big like comic book name back then, though.
Yeah.
Gail Simone, she's a comic book writer, and she started the big woman in refrigerators movement. So
we mentioned her
a few weeks ago. Yeah. Possibly Brian Michael Bendis. I don't know why I put him on there honestly, but he's like the biggest name in comic books. Kind of, he's the man with the single largest impact on comics in the 21st century, arguably. People be like, "Hey, Jeff Johns." I'm like, quiet.
You're a big Brian Michael Bendis boy.
To a degree, yeah. And finally, Alex Myers. He's technically a comic book creator, and he's a big YouTube personality who pitches a lot of the whole idea of comics and things like that. But anyway, timeline, right? Is that you want to do that? Do you want to go through a timeline?
Yeah, let's explain how this kind of has developed a little bit.
So
it's
a lot of the
aspects.
Complicated. Yeah. So Marvel's been. Shoot, I don't know. It's hard to explain, you know? I had it in my head. I was going fine.
Well, we can start with just...
So Marvel had some pretty good sales in the mid-2000s because Brian Michael Bendis was in control of everything, and he was having a lot of big game-changing events. People were buying comics in droves because we had, why are the Avengers disassembling? Let's go buy those comics. Why are Captain America and Iron Man fighting? Let's go buy those comics. The Skrull invasion, let's go check that out. Siege, and other things. But he had a lot of major events and had a lot of creative control in multiple industries. It was all kind of centered up. So there's a lot of people buying comics at that point. It was like kind of an uptick in there because the market went down in the 90s and it started to pick up in the early 2000s. Picked up a little bit, and now it's kind of starting to go back down a little bit, or at least plateauing.
Would you think that maybe it started to pick up in the early 2000s because of the Spider-Man movies and some of those movies that were happening?
Possibly, yeah. And Marvel made a lot of big creative choices too back then too, like the Ultimate Comics or Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah,
hey,
that's true.
He comes back around. Yeah, and they're also started bringing around a lot of their old characters who died off too, which might have been an attraction. But I might be. Yeah, that could also be an aspect of that.
Because I think at that point, superhero movies were more of a novel thing, and maybe it was getting people more interested in those characters again.
Yeah, because in the 90s, all they really had was like a bunch of TV films like Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., starring David Hasselhoff, and Blade, and other things.
And I don't think people really knew, like, even if Blade was a thing, I feel like a lot of people who went to the theater to see Blade didn't fully know the full extent of Blade as a comic book series.
Yeah, they're like, hey, vampire movie, let's go check this out.
Yeah, and the same thing with Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, did people really know
it was a TV movie.
Yeah, did people really know what the hell S.H.I.E.L.D. was?
I mean, no, but they knew who David Hasselhoff was.
They knew who David Hasselhoff, exactly.
Especially in Germany.
Yeah, and I think that now it's a little bit more in through the window of comics, and people kind of know that, hey, Spider-Man's a comic book guy.
Yeah. But also, I feel like over the years, people kind of got burnt out on events. Because
yes.
took a bit. So the events were probably pulling a lot of comic readers in. Because, like, Civil War, I got to read Civil War and all those things. But people kind of got burnt out, I guess. I think that's also a possible reason why it's starting to plateau. But so Axel Alonso became editor-in-chief in 2011 of Marvel. Joe Quesada stepped down. He was the old one. So Axel Alonso picked the pace and started to make some new changes to kind of like give Marvel kind of a fresh, upbeat feel in the event known as a Marvel Now. It's kind of like a rebranding. They brought in a lot of new creative teams, things like that. And it's kind of like a soft reboot, where it's new ideas. That's where the Moon Knight comic you read came out as.
Yeah.
It had a lot of cool ideas, things come out. And we had other ideas. So like Captain Marvel as Carol Danvers came out. That was a pretty good comic. Kamala Khan as Ms. Marvel. She was the first not the first Muslim hero. She was a Muslim superhero who sold a lot and was actually a really good comic. We had Miles Morales came into existence, which was a really cool comic. People loved that. We had a lot of good creative ideas and a lot of good writing, and kind of diverse, and people were kind of like concerned, like, hey, who are all these new diverse heroes coming out? People were kind of like freaking out about that. But it was minor back then, but it wasn't that crazy.
It was just a few.
It was just a few, and people were like, that's where I think people started kind of getting concerned about the whole diversity aspect.
And they weren't major, like, they weren't really replacing.
No, they weren't replacing. Except for maybe Miles Morales, because they killed off the Ultimate Spider-Man, but no one really cared about that, because they did it perfectly,
though. There's also the aspect of the multiverse in Spider-Man comics that really saves them.
They still had ordinary Peter Parker.
Yeah, it wasn't like he was gone.
Yeah. You want to say on that? But yeah.
I think we might expound upon that further
Absolutely.
once the timeline is through.
So from 2012 to 2015, they kept releasing new titles, new creative ideas. So we had a Gambit comic, a lot of like short-lived one-shot issues were coming out too, a lot of ideas. And then in 2015, they decided to try to push the envelope a little bit more in their diversity, which I think called All New, All Different Marvel. And this, they made a big push of legacy characters and more device heroes taking up superhero mantles. So in that run, so Captain America became an old man, then he died and became a hired agent. It's weird. Yeah. And then Sam Wilson the Falcon, a black man, became Captain America. There was a female Thor, which other Thor became unworthy apparently. He lost. Nick Fury whispered something in his ear, and he lost his ability to be unworthy.
They have a lot of really weird plot points to make this stuff happen.
It's weird.
It's like Iron Man becomes a black woman because not quite, but Iron Man
got
dies.
killed.
He's killed and he's
Civil
replaced with his kind of someone he was teaching.
Yeah, so Iron Man got killed in Civil War II, and about 4 issues before that, they introduced the character Riri Williams as this kind of girl genius who's building her own Iron Man suit, and he starts taking her as wing. Then he dies, and she becomes the main Iron Man, Ironheart.
And then he uploaded himself
into the
AI, but then he becomes evil.
Yeah,
which is
kind of a weird handling of that character, because also you just kind of killed him.
It all happens too fast.
Wolverine got killed.
And replaced
by Laura Kinney, X-23 as Wolverine, and Old Man Logan, who came to the mainstream Marvel continuity for some reason. And we had a lot of more...
because people liked...
Yeah, we had Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, a tiny little black girl with a giant red T-Rex.
But that was a new character. That's different.
Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy has been around since the 1970s.
Really? Okay. Yeah. See, I thought that was a new character. I'd never heard of that. Actually.
Not many people have, honestly. It's wild.
I think it's more mainstream now, maybe just because of the controversy.
Yeah. But right when this happened, though, was people kind of freaking out in the whole Comicsgate movement. People felt like they were getting rid of their old heroes to replace them with random new characters that people aren't direct. They're killing off characters for the sake of diversity, which I feel like in some ways that's kind of understandable. I don't know, what's your opinion on that?
Just for the sake of diversity?
Yeah.
I want to hit on this
bit later.
A little later.
Okay.
After we're done with the thing. I do think it's interesting though. They're calling it Comicsgate. This is happening around the exact same time as the whole Gamergate thing, where the same thing is happening. Well, a similar thing is happening in gaming culture. So it seems to me like there's a lot of overlap between these two cultures. So it seems like people are kind of upset about the same things in both sides. Yeah. I also never knew this, but apparently the reason it's called Gamergate and Comicsgate is because controversies in general started having gate added to to them after Watergate. I didn't know that.
Welcome, Levi. You're on the same page now.
Yeah. Fun fact.
So this, when they started doing it, it received a lot of backlash from fans and also from the media. Fox News got after them, apparently, because they had Black Captain America fighting white supremacists on the Mexican border, and they were like, why is Captain America finding hard-blooded Americans?
But the thing about that is that Fox News will jump on stuff like that, and because it fits into their narrative.
Yeah.
And CNN will jump on the opposite end, so...
Yeah,
whatever.
Absolutely. But, and then, so when this started happening... Marvel started around this time. Some of the backlash started happening. Marvel started having a kind of a rough sales period.
Mm-hmm.
Sales started coming down, and Marvel made the claim, which probably didn't help, that our sales are going down because people don't want new and diverse characters. Which we'll touch on that here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably not the case.
It's the same thing.
It didn't help. Yeah.
It's the same thing that, what was it? Is it Battlefield? The game Battlefield? Yeah. They said a similar thing when people got upset that there was this amputee woman that was in the trailer who had like a robotic arm, and everyone's like, this isn't realistic.
Well, the robotic arm is kind of understandable because it's World War II.
Yeah, but what the person who was working on the game said is, oh, you just don't like that there was a woman on the cover.
That's not true.
French
resistance fighters, the Russian night witches. There's plenty of women fighting in the war and stuff like that.
It's. I don't think anyone was upset about that, but I think that in general there's a lot of defensiveness going on from both sides, and it's really touchy, and that's why you have big, who should be professionals, people who people who are at the head of these big comic book companies, people that are in charge of these big gaming companies are like, well, you just don't like diversity because they feel attacked.
Yeah, that's absolutely understandable. Well, quick, let me explain what Comicsgate is, because I keep saying it, maybe I don't understand it. So Comicsgate is the belief that there's a strong social justice warrior or anti-conservative blacklisting going on in comics, which we believe that Marvel might have been possibly people who weren't following the whole make your characters diverse and more progressive being kind of ousted at Marvel, or at least limiting their creative ability, which is possibly true. We don't know. But there's all accusations going on that a lot of comic book writers were being fake fans and just BuzzFeed writers getting a chance to write on a comic book, and they had a bad Twitter presence, and all the writing was unrealistic because characters would be like, "Oh, LOL, let's go get some food," and self-outing each other. It's weird, and proponents of both sides would tend to cry out and verbally assault the other side. And one of the biggest names in this was a guy named Alex Myers, who runs a comic book channel called Comic Books Matter, but used to be called Comics and Diversity. And he and another guy started kicking up a lot of dust in the storm because he'd be constantly calling out Marvel and things like that, being like SJWs, and it was awkward. It was an awkward time. And it still is, actually.
It is still awkward, but I will say this. I feel like the initial backlash of what I think has been several different industry-wide moves towards diversity has kind of calmed down. And I'm not just talking about comics. I'm talking about all of those controversies because it seems like it all happened at the same time with different industries.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like the people who were upset about it have now kind of quieted for the most part and have just kind of accepted the new normal or left. But that doesn't make what's going on better or worse. It just means that they're gone, or they're not talking about it as much because there's nothing new to say. It's just kind of, I think people feel, firstly, in regards to the diversity thing, in general, I think people who are in nerd culture especially, there's generally a lot of males in nerd culture.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more females now than there were in the past, but there's still a majority male audience.
There was a statistic that went around that recently 51% of comic book readers were females, which people kind of argue about. I don't think that's true.
I don't believe that for a second.
I mean, maybe an online reading, but
yeah, maybe an online reading. But there's also the fact that in nerd culture, there's a lot of things in the industry that encourage people to kind of not. This is gonna tread on some toes. But there's a lot of things in these different industries like gaming and comics that encourage people to not get out and I guess socialize as well. So you have a lot of people who are kind of more shut in, and I think nerds make fun of this aspect of their culture with each other a lot.
The Big Bang Theory look to it.
The Big Bang Theory looks to it, but it is reality. It is a thing. Like, video games are addictive. Like, I'm not against video games, but video games are addictive, and they encourage people to stay inside. Comic books aren't really something that, for people that's easy to talk to outsiders. So you kind of only talk to people that are like you when you're talking about comic books.
And there's also a lot of gatekeeping, I feel like, in comics and things like that. Like,
because people hold it so near and dear to their heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what you have is this situation where you have a lot of people who are very similar to each other, and when you start adding diversity into the mix, I think they see it as an attack on their way of living.
Absolutely. They feel like I feel like one of the big feels is that a lot of readers be like, all comics should be accessible or at least geared toward them. Does that make sense? I'm not saying
like to feel like they're being related to. People
absolutely.
like relatable things.
And I feel like by changing these characters, they're kind of casting them out, which I don't think is the case. I feel like the best way to describe it is, so Marvel's whole belief was that they wanted a hero or character for every person of every color and every race. They wanted someone that African Americans could relate to, someone that Muslim Americans could relate to. And then a lot of people believed, and a lot of people on the other side felt like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white person, three of them, could be diverse because you have whole backgrounds and things like that where they grew up, which is rough arguing, but that's kind of like how I kind of saw as like kind of going with it.
Yeah, I think that part of the thing is, in the past, comic books have always offered hope and a hero to people who needed it. In the early days of comics, with the wars that were going on, they really helped people, I'd say, to kind of escape that whole thing and be like, well, we've got Superman, and he's going to protect the American way.
Yeah, he's going to go fight Nazis and stuff.
In a time when there's the Cold War, or there's Nazis, or whatever there is. And by adding more diverse characters, you could definitely argue that it's just still doing that. It's just doing that for different people, and the people who have been holding on to the way things were may not feel very happy about that.
They feel like they're infusing politics in it, I feel like.
Yes.
Like one comic I was reading, it was a Silver Sable comic where she saves Syrian refugees. Some people were like, oh, this instigating politics and actually saving Syrian refugees. Oh, no. But I also feel like that's also a big number issue. Like, that would be realistic. I don't know. But, shoot, I was going really good right there. Dang it.
So it's I don't think diversity in comics is a problem by itself. How you do diversity could be a problem.
That's absolutely, yeah.
But it's also not necessarily the reason that the comic book sales are dropping. But I think we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, let's talk about the whole...
Yeah,
I feel like one of the problems that they had with the whole, like, all different is how they were handling their old characters, because they were taking all the old characters and replacing them with the brand new characters that we didn't know. Like, we didn't know that the female Thor was just Jane Foster, which was, I thought people more, I don't know. But, like, Riri Williams, I feel like was a very poorly done character, because she was interested 4 issues before, then just killed off Iron Man so she could be Ironheart.
But all of them, they kind of quickly and swiftly got replaced.
Yeah, and a lot of them were just characters who really had no business really being the next character. Like, I could compare it to the whole Woman in the Refrigerator thing. So we had a character get created 4 issues before she got killed off to enhance that male story, which I feel like there's kind of a parallel possibly to her and the Iron Man thing, where like create a character 4 issues before, have him get killed off, and then have a girl take the place.
It's like her only purpose is diversity.
Absolutely.
And see, that is the next problem. Like, for example, there's kind of a trend right now in advertising and business to advertise through diversity. So, like, for example, there was I think it was a Converse commercial I saw on YouTube where it was all about, like, women saying no to their bosses and quitting their job and going and doing their own thing, or, you know, not doing whatever doing what they want to do, and they were all wearing Converse shoes or something weird like that. It might not be Converse. It might have been a different brand, so don't get mad at Converse. But
1 second. Before I go any further, I just want to say the whole 51% statistic of women in comics, I wasn't saying that wasn't true. I was just saying it's an interesting statistic. It's a lot of people don't really, it isn't really well portrayed in a lot of media, I guess. I just got tweeted about that. I just want to address that.
I want to say that me personally, I have some doubts about that, but like I'm not going to say it's not true either.
Yeah.
I just feel like maybe, I don't know, I have doubts.
It's all good. Like, what were we saying? Carry on.
But like, and there's nothing wrong with like, all of the things that they're talking about in the commercial, but they're commercializing it.
Yeah.
They're literally like, remember when well, I guess don't remember. Back when cigarettes started advertising, they started doing this thing, I think it was called lifestyle advertising, where like you're cool if you smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, the fun stuff
now,
is smoking.
Now you're a strong, independent woman if you wear Converse. That's shady. That's shady as hell. And it's the same thing as happening in movies. It's the same thing that's happening in TV shows. It's the same thing that could possibly be happening in Marvel Comics. And it could be being done even out of fear because, let's be honest, the comic books before this time were not very diverse. There was a lot of the same kinds of people. There was a little bit of diversity, but they weren't very diverse. And this could just be a huge knee-jerk reaction to reverse the trend, and they went too far,
It's understandable, yeah.
Because no one likes their characters being changed, like, fundamentally. Like, for example, it's kind of the J.K. Rowling treatment.
Oof.
Yeah, I'd say it's actually the exact same thing. Like, well, Hermione could be black.
Hermione was black in the books. I think they said that in the books.
It said, there's a line in the book that says her white face.
Oh,
it says,
never mind.
Yeah, no, Hermione was not black in the books. She just said that in the tweet.
It's like a whole, Dumbledore was just riding roller skates the whole time through the books. It wasn't important to the plot, so I didn't say it.
Yeah, and this is kind of similar. It's a little different because I think comic books have a history of changing their characters into different things, though. Mm-hmm. And this is the defense I have for them. Even though I'm not fully defending them, they have an argument here that they haven't made. And that's that comic books do have a history of, like, different people taking up the mantle of
Absolutely.
the character. With, like, Robin, for example. How many people have been Robin? 3 or 4 now?
Actually, 5 now.
5 now?
So, no, we have Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Duke, whoever's faces, Stephanie Brown. Did I say Damian?
No.
We have Damian Wayne. We also have Jarro.
Holy crap.
That's a brand new character. Remember the giant starfish named Starro?
Yes.
Who this thing fought? So it's part of him that grew back, a tiny little jellyfish who thinks Batman is his dad. And it's a little starfish.
Is a really weird plot already.
The little Robin costume be like, I got you, Dad! Saving the day.
So, like, but the thing is that people who are like,
comics. Sorry.
People who are like, oh man, I don't like that my favorite character is being changed in this way. You got to realize that that's the way this has happened in the past for a very long time.
It's always been characters taking up new mantles. Like there was the Flash before Barry Allen was the Flash.
But they were always straight white dudes.
No, bear with me here. But there was a Green Lantern before Green Lantern, and furthermore, we had other Flashes and Green Lanterns after them. We had a new Flash, came Wally West, because Barry Allen was gone. But he was an established character in the continuity who took the mantle. Kyle Rayner took the mantle of Green Lantern when Hal Jordan died. And people were mad about that, but also, over time, as those characters were around, it got more of a footing. People started liking that character more the more he was around. So I feel like a big thing of it is, one, you have time with the character to get established, and also, if you're going to create a new character just to do it, give them a little chance to get a little traction first. Which I have so a lot of the characters who took places were established characters. So Sam Wilson, the Falcon, has been Captain America's sidekick since the 70s. So I have no problem with him taking the mantle of Captain America. That's just normal, I think, because he's arguably one of the best people to do it besides Winter Soldier. And Winter Soldier has already taken the mantle of Captain America before.
Yeah.
That was already a thing. So I have no problem with Winter Soldier taking that. X-23, Laura Kinney, she's been around since the early 2000s. I have no problem with her taking the male Wolverine, even though she had her own identity. But she's still possibly one of the better characters to do it, because she has a similar power set, and she's literally Wolverine's daughter.
And I want to reiterate, this isn't just a Marvel thing. This is a comics thing.
Absolutely.
Because when you have a character that's existed for so long, eventually you're just kind of like, well, what do we do?
Now, with Iron Man, though, I feel like Riri Williams was handled poorly, but they could have done Rhodey instead. Remember Rhodey from the Iron Man movies, War Machine?
Yeah.
He was the black man who could have easily taken the role if they wanted to diversify. But also, in that same comic run, they already killed him off, so they couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Which, bad playing on their part, but hey, that's just my opinion. But, yeah.
I think that... this. You know what else is similar to this? It's kind of like the... it's kind of like that Ghostbusters movie that was all female cast.
That wasn't horrible.
I didn't like the movie.
That's understandable.
I thought that like it was just it was a very political idea. That one was anyway.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to justify it. With comics, I feel like there is something to justify it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it isn't political. It can still be political, even if you have a justification. But that doesn't make it bad either. So,
I feel like also one of the arguments made a lot from the more right, not right, conservative side, if we may say that, was that they were depowering men and making females more masculine to make them more, which I'm stepping on coals here, so bear with me. Like, I'm not trying to make anyone mad here. People felt like they were making a lot of artists were making the female characters look more masculine, and people were like that was a wrong thing to do, and acting more like cold and more man-like, I guess, which I don't really fully understand that was going on. It was a major argument like 2 years ago. I promise, I'm not making this up.
No, I believe you.
People felt like
I heard some people saying it.
Yeah, they felt like the artists were. It's all good. Artists were making these characters more man-like, and that being a character looking female was a bad thing, which I didn't really understand that argument. That's just me. I just don't support it, but I'm losing traction on this, so I'm just going to keep going.
No, I think that it makes sense for women superheroes to be tougher around the edges. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense for these women to wear these like really
I agree with that.
Weird costumes and to these people are fighters. They're out there saving lives every single day. They've seen things. They're doing things. They're heroic. They're getting beat up. They're fighting people twice their size. Of course they're going to be tough around the edges. It's unrealistic the way they were portrayed in the past. It's almost dumb. Just because it's the way it has been for forever doesn't mean it's the way it should be. And it's part of the... Oh, I'm going to sound like the woman from Gamergate. There was a woman from Gamergate that was like games appeal to the male fantasy.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's a great meme.
But that is exactly what was happening with the comics in the past. And
so it's hard to have a female character comic without having a scene of her being in the shower.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
And legit. You don't. If you're a man in the whenever time period in the past, you don't want to date Wonder Woman. She'll beat you up. Maybe not beat you up, but you don't want to cross her because you'll remember and never cross her again afterwards.
She'll break you like a toothpick.
She will break you. Like, this is not a woman to be playing with. So why I don't understand the whole making her into something to fantasize about is what I'm trying to say. So it makes sense that they would be colder, more manly, tougher characters, in quotes manly.
Yeah.
And I actually like that more. I think that's cooler,
I agree. It's like people getting mad over this kind of crossover. So when the Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, they had Black Cat in there, which is a character who had a very low-cut shirt. People are like, mad, like, what? Why does she have to have her boobs out? It doesn't make sense. And then in the PS4, they took that away, gave her more of a womanly figure. People were like, what? It was kind of weird. Like,
because people get so testy about this.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important to note that because a lot of things in this regard have been changing across the board in the world, especially in America,
Yeah.
people notice it more.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, if you were to change Robin to a new character, people wouldn't have cared, but because a lot of things are moving towards more diverse things, it is kind of political. It definitely is political. It's not a bad thing for it to be political, but I can understand the feeling of not wanting to constantly have to be shown the politics all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that Marvel needs to be more sympathetic and understanding to the fact that this is still supposed to be entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably shouldn't be messing with these major characters so fundamentally.
Yeah.
I honestly think that the underlying problem of this is actually just the habit that comics have of replacing characters and having other characters take up the mantle of the hero. To me, that makes no sense. I know it's a tradition in comics and it happens a lot, but why is some dude or some lady or some whoever just like, well, I'll be Iron Man now? I know it's all like, Iron Man's a symbol, or Batman's a symbol, and Robin's a symbol that represents something greater. They can say that to me. Everyone can say that to me all day. I just disagree. I think that if you want to be a hero, you pick your own name and you do it your own way. You are your own person. If superheroes were real, no one would be doing that.
I agree. Marvel has had a big problem recently with just slapping the Avengers on anything just to help it sell. Like the new thing they're releasing here soon. So they've had U.S. Avengers, Secret Avengers, things like that. But recently they're having a comic coming out called Savage Avengers. It's Wolverine, Punisher, Elektra, Conan the Barbarian.
That's not the Avengers.
No, that's not the Avengers. But there's instead of giving characters a new name, they know that the title Avengers sells, so they just slap a new name on it. So coming up with something more creative, which that doesn't create a lot of good legacy teams. I feel like in the long run, people remember the Defenders. People who read comics remember the Defenders. They were a team created back in the 60s. They had an iconic lineup, but they weren't just the Avengers. They were a different thing altogether. But by just slapping the Avengers on it, you ruin a chance of creating a new world or a new, not really a facet, more just a new, a new title, I guess, for people to latch onto. New, does that make sense?
Yeah, but a title of a team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not like an individual comic.
Yeah, not just another Avengers runoff, but like something new and different altogether. Like that it could be. But yeah. However, by saying that, I don't think that diversity is a problem. Is the reason for comic book sales dropping, for the most part.
No, I think people who read comics just like comics. They like the idea of the medium in general. So I think they're going to continue to read comics.
Yeah, because in 2015, sales were going down and. Tell me, we got 15 minutes. We got this. Marvel made the comment in 2015 that they think diversity is the reason comics was failing. I don't think that's the reason. I feel like the big thing.
How dare they? Honestly.
Yeah, that was dumb for them.
That was really.
I think
dumb.
that guy got fired. Honestly,
he should have been, because that is the dumbest thing. What an egotistical.
Marvel Comics was
high and mighty thing to say.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah, Marvel Comics. So comic books is not selling as much, but Marvel Comics is still the number one comic seller right now. It outsells DC by price and by number of comics sold. So I don't think that's honestly the reason. I feel like the thing is that sales are just low, but other reasons are. So a big thing that Marvel is having a problem with lately is that they don't advertise their books anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they have a new comic title come out, they stop mentioning it and they just move on to the next title to pitch it. Like, oh, that was a big comic, and it makes people forget that comics exist. Honestly.
Yeah. I want to point out, though, that in other industries, too, this happens, where people who push diversity get defensive over diversity,
mm-hmm.
and then they blame people for not, like no one has an obligation to buy your stuff. J.K. Rowling, guy in Battlefield, Marvel CEO.
Yeah.
No one. Stop calling people bigoted for not buying your crap. I'm sorry.
If you want people to buy it, advertise it.
And don't insult your fans. That is just...
because that's been a problem before. People asking hey, why is this the character? And people and then writers would sometimes lash out on Twitter against fans.
It's inappropriate behavior. These people, I know they're artists, but they still need to be professional, because these people are relying on their fans in order to make a living. You cannot just insult these people that are your fans anyway. It's just such an egotistical thing to do. It just disgusts me a little bit. But whatever. I understand that they're frustrated because I know they believe in this stuff. They believe in what they're doing.
Yes.
They believe that what they're doing is right. But they must think that the people that are buying from them are stupid or just bigoted in general beforehand in order to make those comments, because people don't lash out about things that they just all of a sudden began to realize. That's not the way it works. They had to have been building that opinion for a long time, meaning that they've been looking down on comic book readers for a while.
Possibly. I think the whole stereotype of it being a white male industry could also possibly contribute to that whole feel like, but I'm not going to say that's the reason though.
It certainly shows in a lot of the writing in the past anyway, not recently, but in the past. Anyway, I'm sorry, I had to go on that tangent.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Furthermore, another reason I think comics aren't selling as much is that there's too many and they cost too much.
Yes, and
to a degree.
I want to add on to that. This is my theory. I think that it's not just too many comics. I think it's too much crossover. Comics in general have a history.
Ever since Bendis, really.
Have a history of crossovers. But that is precisely the reason why it's so hard to get into them in the first place. See, I think the tenets of a good story involve you getting to know a character deeply and watching them grow and change in their own universe. I don't understand. People should feel like this is bizarre, how much crossover there is, because each character in a superhero series generally is very attention-grabbing. They're very big personalities overall. And when you have an Avengers situation, you have all these brightly colored suit people who all have their own huge personalities, constantly vying for your attention. There's no chance for any of them to grow or change. I mean, they try and make it happen, but it doesn't seem as genuine to me or as interesting to me as when you allow a character to kind of exist in their own storyline for a while.
I completely disagree, personally. That's just my opinion, though. But I feel like there is plenty of potential for team books to have character development. I think it's easy. Granted, you can't provide as much attention for one character, but overall, there's a difference between looking at a solo dynamic and a group dynamic. A group dynamic is a big thing, I think, in prior team books. You must see how this group gets together and how they interact with each other, and more importantly, how these characters grow from knowing each other. I think that's interesting, and solo aspect can easily dive more into how that character feels more easily of just that one individual character, but also get more bang for your buck, honestly, from having a team book, as well as having a new way of looking at it. Yeah, I like Silver Surfer, I like Namor, I like Doctor Strange, I like the Hulk, but if I want to know more about that solo character, I can go read a solo series. Well, also, I like all those characters, but they're all in the same book. That's great for me, because I can just go see all my favorite characters in one book, which I understand you have a problem with. But that's just my opinion. My opinion is that having a random character cross over into a solo book for no reason is kind of awkward. Like, why is Iron Man just randomly appearing in my Wolverine book for the sake of a whole big event?
That happens too, and I think that's weird. But personally, I feel like team books and crossover situations should be more of a special thing. I think it needs to happen less. Let's put it that way. Because, I get the idea of team books, but I think that the novelty and the interest from a team book comes from knowing the character deeply and then seeing how it interacts with other people. But when you've got all these characters interacting together, it seems overcomplicated to me. And yes, there is new character dynamics, but I'm just saying that I'm more interested in seeing the depth of the character on their own. How do they act when they don't have other people influencing their decisions? What are they struggling with? I want to see that from a more personal level, and I want to see.
That's just your own personal opinion.
Yes,
How
this is
you
my
feel.
own personal
Yeah.
opinion. I feel like a lot of other people would share that opinion with me. Say, for example, if you wanted to pick up a book series, in what makes more sense? Starting with a book series that's one narrative about one person going and figuring something out and having their character arc, or starting with a book series that has a billion different main characters, because that's what a superhero is, a main character. Has a billion different main characters that all have their own arcs that are halfway through, most of the way through, or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're together. You know what I'm saying? Like, the value in a team seems to me to come from already knowing all the characters individually. But maybe I'm crazy. I don't particularly like picking up in the middle of a series very much, because I like to see how people grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like to take my time with characters. That's why I think all the Marvel movies go too quickly. I want to spend about twice as long on every scene, because I want to feel it develop. I want to kind of live with that for a little bit. And I know that not everyone shares that opinion with me, but I feel like it would definitely simplify things if there were less team series. And I think it would make people more interested, because then they can be like, you know what, I like this hero, I identify with this hero, I'm gonna read this hero, and not have it be part of some big meta arc that just goes on for infinity and is super complicated. I think that it's because of all the crossover that Marvel is so complicated and so difficult to get into.
Yeah. That's understandable. That's a lot taken right there.
That's just how I
Okay,
feel.
my personal opinion. Okay, I'm going to go on right now. Okay, it's all good. So there's too many comics, I think, and there's too many ongoing comics. It's hard for a character to just jump in halfway through a comic. That's just how it goes. So I feel like if there's I have a limited amount of money I can spend on comics because I have a budget.
Yeah.
Yes, and if I want to read things, but if there's 10 things I want to read and they're all $3.99, $4.99, I'm going to pick like maybe 2 or 3 to read. This is how it is. Because I feel like Marvel was expecting all their readers to like buy as much as they can. That's just not going to work. But I feel like by cutting down on comics, they can get more sales on certain books and things like that. But furthermore, I feel like from your side standpoint, I feel like there needs to be more. Say, they have a few set books. So they have one Avengers book, one X-Men book, one Spider-Man book instead of 3 Spider-Man books, and then maybe a few others. And then the rest of the books either short series, so like Agents of Atlas 1 through 6. And that runs for 6 issues, and then they pick up a new different title for those next 6 issues. I think that's just my idea for that idea.
That makes sense.
Or they could go like the whole idea of say, like, Amazing Fantasy or Tales to Astonish. We have these big anthology books where, like, you have, like, a new character for a while, do those things, and then move on to the next character. I feel like that would make sense to me. But furthermore, there's too many different teams of the same team, so there should not be an X-Men Red, an X-Men Blue, and an X-Men Yellow. I get there's a lot of X-Men members, but also, like, which one do I pick if I want to read X-Men? So if I was a new reader walking to a comic book shop, I asked, hey, I want to read an X-Men comic, where do I start? I think it would be hard to point out, like, oh, well, we have 3 different X-Men comics. Pick your fancy.
And see, what I would want to do personally is I would want to just start with just Wolverine. Mm-hmm. I would want to dive really deeply into Wolverine.
But even then, there was like 2 Wolverine comics going on.
They make it too
all new
hard.
Wolverine and Old Man Wolverine. Like, why is Wolverine Old Man, or why is Wolverine a girl?
Old Man Wolverine's where it's at, though. So
you can leave. I have every single issue of the all new Wolverine.
Well, you know,
it's a good run by Tom Taylor. You check your high horse right at the horse at the gate.
You check your high horse.
You check your high horse at the horse.
Which one? The high horse or the low horse?
The horse. But yeah, I think that's just the best solution, that they need to cut back a little bit on comics, and if they're going to make a comic, if you're going to have a new team come out, make it like a limited series, and people like it, maybe move on to an ongoing series possibly. Like one of the best teams they had up recently was this team called Agents of Atlas. It was heroes from the 1950s just getting back together and running like a secret crime organization, but actually as heroes. It was really great. Had like characters like Namorita, Namora, I can't remember her name. There's 2 different ones. A robot guy, Gorilla Man, Venus, the goddess of love, and things like that. And they would get together for like 6 issues, and then they'd disband. And maybe a few years later, get back together under 6 issues and disband. And then people were like, hey, we love these characters, we want more. And then they started an ongoing series. Granted, it didn't run long, but still, I feel like that would probably be a better marketing idea than like, because then I was like, oh, I can commit to the series for 5 issues. If I can spend extra $3 every month, there's only be a 5 more. It's only run for 5 issues. Like I'm presently reading a new Conan comic because I know it's only is going to run for 6 issues. I can know, hey, that's not like a long-term commitment right there. That's just my opinion, though. Got that out there, but yeah.
I mean,
but like I said,
I agree with all you said.
One last thing, real quick. So yeah, so Marvel is still in the lead in comics though right now. I checked the December-November runs; they're still ahead of DC and all the other ones. But also, I feel like another reason Marvel started slacking off, or at least hurting in 2015 and so forth, was that DC started competing again. That's one big thing. So DC launched Rebirth, and they started releasing new content for kind of like the old ways of how it works, because DC was struggling for a while, and Marvel could just sit back for a little bit and relax. But then DC would kick into high gear recently, and now Marvel has to compete again with comics, and that's another thing because they're still vying for financial attention from readers. But that's separate. Go ahead and finish what you're going to say.
I'm just going to say that in the old days, the way that they would develop these characters, even in teams, but in the solo things, is they would have lots of like different adventures that they would go on, and occasionally you would learn something new about the character, and the character would develop, you know. Mm-hmm. But now there's so much going on, there's so many things revealed at once, and there's just too much to keep track of that it's impossible to feel anything for any of these characters very often.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem, is that I think people should want to feel something for these characters instead of just have another flashy fight scene or another whatever. I mean, fight scenes are awesome and everything, but you have to care about the character in order to feel the tenseness of a fight scene and them risking their lives in the first place. It's not just about epicness sometimes.
Yeah.
So just too much of everything is the problem. And not only that, again, people don't want to pay money for a physical medium unless they're really into it and collecting the comics in the first place. Then why are they going to pay for a digital version when they can just go pirate it and it's actually easier than paying for it? So there's a lot of problems. Marvel needs to incentivize people to buy comics again somehow.
The comic industry wants to be here in another 10 years. It needs to adapt.
Yes.
Yeah, that might mean moving away from print and going all digital, maybe.
But they need a reason to make it appealing, not to just pirate